All right. Hey y'all. So this week we have been talking about Miss Stella Adler and her teachings. And so I wrote down some of my notes here. Um First, so as a high school theater arts teacher, I'm always looking for ways to inspire my students and how can I take their acting lessons to the next level because my background mostly I don't know if y'all remember from my first post, but my background mostly is in technical theater, and of course I had to take my required acting courses in college, but my focus was always on tech. So when I come into my theater arts position, my theater arts teacher position, I'm always, I think from tech, a tech standpoint mostly. So it's just been really cool learning about all these different acting teachers, like more in depth. So one thing that really got to me is how Adler, of course, emphasized emotional truth and authenticity. Um, it just totally makes sense. As actors, we got to connect with our own emotions to make our performances more believable and more real. And of course, it's not just about memorizing lines, it's about diving deep into our own feelings and experiences to bring life to the characters that we portray. And so one common thing amongst all of the teachers we've been learning about is imagination. So Adler more so focuses on using our imagination to create more, to add more dimension to characters. And so it's not just relying on our personal memories, but the world of the character. So given circumstances, right? That amazing vocabulary term that we all use, given circumstances, the who, the what, the when, the where, the why, the motivation behind anything. I just think that's really cool because I feel like when I introduce given circumstances in my classroom, my students understand more of what I want from them. And then it just, disconnects like a play from being more so literature to being something that we more so act out, which not Stadler, Adler, Adler actually talks about in our introduction video, disconnecting the literature to the acting. Um, so more action, of course. And so Adler says that feelings are a byproduct of doing, not the other way around. So instead of just getting caught all up in our emotions, we got to focus on what our characters do and why they do it, to give more purpose to our performances. And I think that's a game changer in the classroom. You always want to give your students more to work with so that they then bring in, not only their personal emotions, which you always do a little bit of that, but the difference between Strasberg and Adler is that, it's not solely about getting caught up in our emotions. And like I said, I think that's a game changer in the classroom because when you give students more tools to work with, then they are able to do a better performance. Um, the whole idea of having a life outside of theater hits home. Because as a thespian, you always want to make sure that you get the job done, that you're doing what you need to do. So you spend a lot of time in the space, and then we become so far removed from other things. And I think a lot of inspiration for the theater comes from outside of the theater. Otherwise, where we get the literature that's written to then bring to life. So we can get really, really, really act up in the theater and in acting sometimes that we forget that there's a whole world out there. So one of Adler's teachings is to go out, do different stuff, experience life. And when you come back in, those experiences help make acting more real. So it's not solely about being caught up in your emotions, but bringing the world to the stage. And I feel like she's so right about that. So when I engage my students with these different experiences, their performances, essentially will become more authentic and relatable. Okay. My one of my last notes here, Adler's approach versus Strasberg and Stanislavski. They all had their own take, of course, but it's been interesting seeing the differences, and I enjoy reading about it in the discussion boards. Um y'all's comparisons between the three. So we got Stanislavski with his method stuff and, digging into your personal memories to get into character. And I think that is a legit technique, but it can get really heavy. And so his focus on emotional memory brings out some very powerful performances, but it can also be emotionally draining and tricky for some actors. And me being a high school theater teacher for high schoolers. And then with Strasberg, who took Stanislavski's method and ran with it, his heavy emphasis on emotional recall and getting all in the moment. It's like he wanted actors to live their characters' lives for real with their own personal experiences as well. And that's just baggage. So, not that it's just baggage, but that's just a lot. So we want to make sure that we don't put too much on them from the perspective of a high school theater teacher once again. But then here comes Adler, and she's like, wait a minute, let's not let's not lose ourselves in the emotions. And she's all about emotional truth and, originality, being authentic, and tapping into our emotions, but more balanced. So instead of just relying on our memories, once again, we use imagination to create better characters. It's like the sweet spot between realism and then creativity and action. All right. So, my final thought, when I compare Adler to Stanislavski and Strasberg, the approach is like an awesome middle ground. And for me, I think Adler's approach is very much so um I think I would use it in my classroom more so than I would Strasberg or Stanislavski, because it's the best of both worlds. And as high school actors, I think that she gives the tools to be more creative without losing ourselves in the process. And I think um my students would really dig that. So those are my ramblings for this week. And see y'all next week.